all heard of the horror iceberg, right? All the horror films that are too scary to watch. Well, we're going to go over some of those films today, but the PG version of them, of course, because some of them are really messed up. Starting off this list today, we have A Clockwork Orange. It's a crazy film to start with. It's really not too scary to watch. It's so good. A Clockwork Orange was adapted from the novel of the same name. The film follows Alex, who is a charismatic anti-social delinquent whose interests include classical music, committing crimes, and ultra-violence. How sweet! He leads a small group, and the film chronicles the horrific crime spree of this group, his capture, and attempted rehabilitation via an experimental psychological conditioning technique. While disturbing in the book, in the movie it is much more apparent and far more disturbing to actually watch what this group of friends do to helpless victims, all in the name of being young and causing trouble. Today the film has gained cult movie status, with several people rediscovering this incredibly violent film. When it was released, though, it was quickly pulled because copycat criminals were starting to arise, essentially gaining inspiration from the movie. Home invasions, essays, street beatings, and homicide were all a result of the film. Headlines such as, quote, "Hunt for Clockwork Orange sex gang" began to appear in the press during the 1970s, so maybe it's just for the best that it was banned. Next up, we have the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The original Texas Chainsaw Massacre changed the game for horror and slasher films as a whole. It paved the way for current horror movies, but it wasn't seen as great as it is today. Since its initial release, this franchise has been full of sequels and odd remakes. Despite the positive reception the original gained, the gory movie was banned in several countries due to the violent nature it portrayed. You might look back on the movie and be a bit shocked at that, since the violence really isn't even that bad, and Tobe Hooper stated this film would be suitable for children. Okay, yeah, I don't think it would be good for the young, but I will admit when I finally watched this film, I wasn't really that scared. Emily says she was underwhelmed. But I will admit, when I finally watched this film, I really wasn't that scared. You know, it was slightly underwhelming compared to all of the hype, but apparently it was too scary for someone once upon a time. Next up, we have The Exorcist. The Exorcist is such an iconic movie in the horror genre, full of memorable scenes such as Reagan's head doing a complete 180, and of course the scene in which she vomits up her pea soup. Sorry to anyone out there who's eating right now. The film was banned upon release in different cities in the United States as well as in the United Kingdom, and remains one of the scariest horror movies of all time and a very influential classic. Some viewers suffered adverse physical reactions, some fainting or vomiting to shocking scenes such as a realistic cerebral angiography. Many children were allowed to see it, leading to charges that the MPAA ratings board had accommodated Warner by giving the film an R rating instead of the X rating to ensure the troubled production its commercial success. Several cities attempted to ban it outright or prevent children from attending. With a bulk of the film revolving around religion, the Catholic Church were not happy with the release of The Exorcist, and its release led to them citing the film as unsuitable for a wide audience. There were even calls for the film to just be banned. Following the outcry from certain sectors, the film's home sales were made illegal in Britain for a number of years, while the trailer of the film was pulled from screening in American theaters. In 1998, on the 25th anniversary of the film's release, the BBFC finally lifted the ban on home sales of the movie, and the board even permitted uncut video DVD releases of the film, though it came with an 18+ rating. Next up on this list today, we have Hostel. This is a movie that Taylor and I actually watched within the last year. The Hostel films are about young college tourists in European countries who end up getting kidnapped and tormented. Now, due to this, lots of Europeans had issues with it, as they didn't want their home countries to be depicted as tourist traps where people die. But it was only in Ukraine that the movie pushed enough buttons to get itself banned. Both Hostel and its sequel were outlawed in the country for excessive cruelty, as well as for portraying the neighborhood as a place where tourists are routinely tormented for money. Fair enough. Despite the ban, the movie is still legally available for private viewing, which is a little ironic if you've seen the movie. Beyond Ukraine, the uncut version of Hostel Part 2 is banned in Germany and New Zealand, and the film was only released in Malaysia and Singapore after undergoing cuts to its more extreme scenes of torment, violence, and death. And though the film isn't banned in the country, as recently as 2007, politicians in the United Kingdom have argued that images from the film could be deemed illegal. Yeah. I've seen all the Hostel films, and they are pretty gross and gory, so if you don't like those kind of movies, maybe just don't watch them. I don't know. Got a couple ideas for you. Moving on, we have Slender Man. Slender Man was a horror movie that was released in 2018, and it didn't really get much hype until after its initial release. Starring Joey King, Slender Man depicts the iconic, shadowy, and tall monster that targets the people who play his game, and while it's really not very incredibly scary, the state of Wisconsin banned the movie altogether. Why? Well, this film was based on a crime that happened there. The case drew widespread attention because of really just the gory details surrounding it, how vicious this attack was, and because the two attackers said they did it because they believed Slender Man would otherwise hurt them and their families. So really, in the end, it's not very surprising that it was banned in Wisconsin. I can kind of understand where they came from with that. Next up on our list today, we have Saw. The Saw franchise is iconic, of course, and although gory, it appears it was actually banned due to this. It wasn't until the 6th entry that any country made moves to prevent its wide release. Now, the 6th film is like the other ones, so I truly don't understand why just that one would get banned. But regardless, the film was required to cut its more violent scenes to get a wider release in Spain. In Thailand, the movie was banned outright with the very vague reasoning that its release posed a threat, somehow, to public safety. The next in this series, alternatively titled Saw 3D, Saw 7, or Saw the Final Chapter, was banned from public exhibition in Germany for its violence. Again, what makes this movie more violent than the other installments that precede it is a total mystery. Now, a slightly funny but unfortunate situation happened in Massachusetts at a birthday party at the movie theater. What they thought was actually going to be Megamind was Saw 3D, and it took the theater workers a few minutes to realize what was going on and to change the tape. Yeah, that's rough. Next up on our list today, we have the Poughkeepsie Tapes. Some movies have very confusing releases, and the Poughkeepsie Tapes is one of them. This movie serves as a fake documentary about a serial slayer who prowls the area of Poughkeepsie, New York. Throughout the film, there are many films taken by the serial slayer himself of his victims. Again, this is like a fake style documentary. None of this happened, none of it was actually real, but the film debuted at the Tribeca Film Festival in 2007 and was scheduled for a theatrical release in 2008, but MGM pulled the plug. It then saw a very brief release on video on demand in 2014 before getting pulled yet again. It was finally released on DVD in 2017, a full 10 years after its festival debut. The reason for this strange schedule are unknown, but some posit that it was just too disturbing for a wide theatrical distribution. I do completely understand that. Next up, we have Maniac from 2012. Back in 1980, director William Lustig released Maniac, a highly controversial movie about a serial slayer who scalps his female victims. Literally makes me shudder every time I hear that word, think about that, just ooh. The movie was remade in 2012 starring Elijah Wood as the Slayer, and it was just as controversial as the original. Maniac received mixed reviews, with some praising its intelligence and performances, while others criticized the high degree of bloody violence. It's not often that slashers get banned in today's day and age, but Maniac proved the exception. The New Zealand government banned the movie from theaters and restricted its release on home video. The Office of Film and Literature Classification Action meant Maniac could not be screened anywhere other than film festivals or as part of academic study. DVDs of the film would not be allowed for sale either. The government censor said the film's graphic violence could harm the public. Next up, we have The Last House on the Left. Horror pioneer Wes Craven was responsible for two of the most famous horror series of all time, but his career started with a movie so so unsettling. The Last House on the Left, a horror take on Ingmar Bergman's The Virgin Spring. It tells the harrowing story of parents seeking revenge on the people who ended the life of their daughter. The results are brutal, and the film sparked plenty of controversy. In the UK, the British Board of Film Censors declined to give it a certification, resulting in its ban. In 2002, a modified version of the film earned an 18+ certificate, while the uncensored version was released in 2008. It was never even attempted to be distributed in Australia due to the massive censorship issues it would have caused during the period in time, and it was finally released there in 2004, over 30 years later. Though the controversial film initially damaged Craven's reputation because of its shocking content, The Last House on the Left has since attracted a large cult following and is regarded as a forgotten Craven masterpiece. And it was even nominated as an entry for AFI's 100 Years, 100 Thrills list. But yeah, I'm gonna stay with the Scream franchise. No, I'm not. Next up on our list, we have Faces of Death. According to The Guardian, this movie is considered to be one of the most depraved films ever. It features a pathologist named Francis B. Grass as he takes the audience through his collection of deadly footage. The original film contains a mixture of real footage and movie magic, with about 60% being real and 40% being fake. Banned in 46 countries, the BBFC added the film to the UK's Video Nasty list due to a violation of the Obscene Publications Act of 1959. It was also infamous for creating a copycat crime, which took place in November of 1986. The person who committed the crime claimed the idea for it was conceived after he viewed Faces of Death, as he was curious about what it would actually be like to end someone's life. Now, he had shown previous signs of mental illness and was sentenced to life in prison with parole eligibility after 15 years. In February 2022, though, he was denied parole for the 4th time. I could definitely understand why this was banned. Alright guys, that has been our list for today. Thanks so much for checking it out. I've been your host today, Olivia Kozlowski, and I will see you again soon. Bye!